There were some other really big names that you mentioned. Phyllis Schlafly was a huge one. John Rushdoony had some awful moments in here. He was an extremist, piggybacking off what you said. He believed America was founded as a Christian nation. He thought equality was dangerous. He thought democracy was antithetical to God-ordained structures. Look, again, fascinatingly depressing. He said the Civil War was not about Christianity. It was about defending a Christian nation. He was against interracial marriage. He was against women speaking in public. He was anti-Semitic. And you wrote in your book, he said this, public schools posed a direct threat to the authority of the family by usurping parents' role in certain values. So as I'm reading this, I am thinking, wow, this is completely antithetical to the progress that we have made as a society to try and be equal and just for everybody. Why do they take these positions that simply do not want to see someone who maybe doesn't look like them or is not the same gender as them to have equal rights as them?
Oof. Yes, R.J. Rushdoony. Let's start with him. You listed all of those views, and there's more we can add to that list.
Sure.
And who is he? And I don't know if your listeners have ever heard of Rushdoony. And in fact, even among scholars of American Christianity, Rushdoony was just seen as this total fringe figure for a very long time, and incorrectly so. He preferred to stay behind the scenes, but his influence on figures has been profound. His influence through many conservative denominations. Also, he directly influenced Howard Phillips, who went on to found the Council for National Policy. Deeply influential in the whole conservative homeschool network. We're hearing a lot about Doug Wilson these days as one of the leading representatives of Christian nationalism. He has this kind of enclave in Moscow, Idaho. He was directly influenced by Rushdoony. Really, much of the foundations of Christian nationalism today can be traced back to Rushdoony's radical views. He also, the Christian Reconstructionist theology that he developed went on to combine with charismatic teachings to form the basis of dominionism, Seven Mountain Mandate, you may have heard, which is behind the New Apostolic Reformation, kind of all the weird stuff that you're seeing in terms of Trump's Christian supporters, Jericho marches. A lot of these folks were there on January 6th. The prophecies that Trump is God's anointed, all of that. This is a massive movement. And that too can be traced back to Rushdoony's influences, among other influences, right? So this is actually hugely important. And there's a reason when you read that list that it feels eerily familiar with the things that we're seeing today among those in Trump's inner circle.
Mm-hmm. And
so,
yeah, please.
Oh yeah. So then why? This is always a harder question. What do they see here? Rushdoony developed, and he wasn't the only one in the 60s and 70s. You see a kind of resurgence of, frankly, authoritarian traditions of understanding religion and society in rigidly hierarchical ways. So you have the hierarchy of men over women, parents, especially fathers, over children, of those pastors over those under their authority. Everything is all of human society is organized into a chain of command. And what is taught then is to obey God, is to obey the God-ordained authorities in your life, even if they are doing things that may be sinful. So sexual abuse, right? Sorry, submit. And now in many of these spaces, including Rushdoony's direct teachings, there's a racial hierarchy here as well. And so when they're talking about restoring Christian America, making America great again, for some in this movement, those inspired by this theology of kind of social hierarchy, that involves white supremacy, right? It involves patriarchy. It involves all of these things and knowing your place and submitting to the God ordained authorities. And they believe that that is the key to a prosperous society. And it was all messed up with post-war liberalism and the civil rights movement and the women's movement.
I'm going to get into the war movement in just a second. On the Schlafly front, she despised women who expressed themselves. She loved John Wayne. She ran for Congress twice, unsuccessfully. As you mentioned previously, friendly with the John Birch Society. She was anti-federal daycare centers. She hated equality, opposed immigration, and had her views adopted by communities, as you stated, who hated civil rights. I feel like this is a mix of fear-mongering over a word that is thrown around all the time. But when I see anti-federal daycare centers, I think, wow, you guys just hate a degree of helping people, even though it's completely the opposite of what you should be preaching, and that you are somehow going to insert socialism in here to try and fear-monger even more. Is that pretty accurate, would you say?
Oh yeah, yeah. Calling daycare or any form of government assistance, welfare, all of these things, right? Very easily tarred as socialist, Marxist, as un-American, undermining the foundations of American society, undermining American individualism, the can-do spirit, right? All of that. And Phyllis Schlafly, right? She's an incredible figure, honestly. I don't know if you noticed in the book as I was writing about her, like you can't help but kind of stand in awe of who she was and what she did, even as I, detest many of the things that she accomplished. She was formidable. And I think that, when I look at Phyllis Schlafly, I'm reminded of a lot of women in the right, the Christian right in particular, who, the rules kind of don't apply to them as long as they are supporting this movement.
Right.
You can look at Sarah Palin. You can look at, interestingly, this week, even Amy Coney Barrett. What happens, like these women are just great. Absolutely. And they don't have to follow all the rules of, staying at home and submitting to husbands and so on, as long as they're building this movement. But as soon as they're perceived in any way to be an obstacle, all hell breaks loose and they're told to get back into their place. And, Phyllis Schlafly, I think, is a great example. People pointed out, like, wait a minute, you're telling women that, you need to be at home with your kids. And here you are, on a national press campaign, and you're writing these books and, politically mobilizing millions of women. And of course, that was okay. And people often don't realize how much within the right, Christian right, and the right more broadly, women have played a really key role in activism and in mobilization. And so people think, oh, they hate women, they're misogynistic. How could women betray their values, right? How could they vote against their values, that kind of thing? That's just the wrong framework to bring to this.
It's really interesting when you bring up the buzzwords, socialist, Marxist. And I know his name is not in the book, but he is an evangelical Christian, and he is a massive name that I'm sure you are aware of. The fear-mongering that Charlie Kirk has done in order to push these socialism is bad, you're a Marxist, you hate America. It weirdly fits. Like, he was in Southern California. I don't know if you saw this recently. You did. Okay, so if people are unaware, he was in Southern California. He was doing one of those debate me bro sort of things where college students go up to him and he treats them honestly, like I would say professionally like shit. Like, just downplays them, does not value their opinion. It is about deflecting and then getting back to the scripture whenever he possibly can. Again, not included in the book, and I know this is a little off topic, but as you are watching this like Turning Point USA movement take place, what is your reaction to seeing this be so prevalent in not just Republican, but mainly MAGA circles?
Yeah, it all just feels so deeply familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie didn't make the book, although he was on the cusp. In part, I wrote this book. It published in 2020, so I finished it in 2019. And he was definitely on my radar back then. It was not clear that he would become as influential as he now is. But yeah, when you hear these folks on the right, it is jarring just how old the playbook is. And even today, wait, what? I've been called a Marxist so many times in these spaces, and that's
Congrats.
right. That's just, and I'm like, well, what do you even mean by that? Oh, it doesn't even matter, right? That's just the smear. And so to see that still, through propaganda, through the platforms that they have, the algorithms, the kind of whole social media landscape where it's just really sound bites that take hold,
Mm-hmm.
or longer form podcasts, but where it's kind of one side presented, and truth doesn't seem to matter that much anymore at all. To see these old school ideas revived again and take hold, I don't know, it's humbling, I have to say, to realize what's old is new again, and that apparently we just haven't learned.